Good afternoon. This is Dr. Martha Simmons with another session of Preaching and Preachers on Facebook Live. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. It is a sunny Monday here in Atlanta. Come on in and let me know that you are out there for what I know is going to be another wonderful broadcast. I've got some amazing guests today. Come on in. All right, there we go. I see people coming in slowly but surely. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Come on in. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. And when you come in, type in the name of another person who you know would benefit from this broadcast. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. All right. All right. Good morning to my people on the West Coast. Good afternoon to my people on the East Coast. Shouting out my people in the Midwest. All right. They're always saying I don't shout them out. You're being shouted out. Uh, uh, Reverend Livingston, Reverend Hoffman, Cheryl Adamson. All right, from Conway, South Carolina. Okay. Good to have you all with me. When you come on, type in the name of another person you know would benefit from this broadcast. Wendell Craig Wood, great to see you. Uh, Jason Thompson, great to see you. All right, come on in. Come on in. All right, people are coming in. Christopher Ware, all right, from Houston, Texas. All right, all right, come on in. Come on in. All right, all right, all right. People are coming in. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, one and all. And like I said, type in the name of another person you know will benefit from this broadcast. They can jump on right now, or it will be on my page for the next 2 weeks so they can watch it in their leisure. You just go ahead and tell them about it. All right. Thank you so much. Let's get to it. As always, we are praying for those who are sick. We're praying for those who are experiencing a season of bereavement, and we are praying for war torn countries around the world. Okay. All right. Now we're just going to jump right into today's topic: Black church music today. Black church music today. And I am so excited about it. So excited about it. So let me introduce my amazing guest to you. First, we have Marco Merrick. For more than 45 years, Mr. Merrick has served in music ministry. He's a Baltimore native, and he began studying piano at 8 years old at the Peabody Conservatory of Music. He's deeply committed to preserving sacred music, uh, uh, the sacred music, of the African American Church. He's a member of Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia, the nation's oldest music fraternity. He served on the piano faculty at the Nathan Carter School of Music, and he is often called upon as a music consultant, lecturer, and presenter. While a producer at WBZ TV in Boston and WIZ TV in Baltimore, he produced programs and news features on music and the arts. In Boston, he was the organist and director at Union United Methodist Church. as coordinator for performing arts. He did that at Morgan State University with Dr. Nathan Carter. He's produced an unprecedented master class with world-renowned soprano Leontine Price and coordinated the MSU Choirs tour of Bonn, Germany. He he's a member of the President's Committee for the Morgan State University Choir, past chair of the Bannister Lewis Tanner Circle at the Walters Arts Museum, and he mentors high school students and garners scholarships through the Alpha's Botillion program and the Nathan Carter Foundation. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Mass Communication from Townsend University and a Master of Arts in Publication Design from the University of Baltimore's School of Communications Design. Welcome, Mr. Merritt. Next, we have Philip Carter, Stellar Award winner. Philip Carter has rapidly risen to national acclaim as an anointed gospel recording artist and songwriter. He's an accomplished musician, producer, director, conference founder, and a mentor to others musicians. He and his group Sounds of Victory, SOV, they're the 2010 Stellar Award winners as Fan Favorite Choir of the Year. In 2015, he produced a chart-topping gospel and praise song. In 2020, he released another single, I Shall Survive. And then his newest release is entitled Your Consolation Brought Me Joy, Psalms 94:19, which was just released in February of this year. He's a native of Fort Washington, Maryland, and he began playing the Pectic choirs when he was 9. He's the former director of the Georgetown University Choir and the Bowie State University Gospel Choir, and the former assistant director of the Howard University Gospel Choir. As an artist and musician, he shared the stage with many of the world's most celebrated gospel artists. He's invested much of his time teaching independent artists, songwriters, and musicians with the founding of the Independent Gospel Artists Alliance. He did that from 2010 to 2022. And then he did the Bring Back the Choir Forum from 2017 to 2022. He broadcasts 6 days a week online on various platforms under the Hymns with Philip Carter brand. He serves as president and CEO of Sounds of Victory and Philip Carter Music. Then we have Dr. Candace Laughinghouse, PhD. She is a distinguished scholar and activist whose life work centers on advancing eco-womanism and environmental justice. Her academic journey culminated in a PhD in theological ethics from Chicago Theological Seminary, building upon her earlier degrees from the University of California at Berkeley, Candler School of Theology at Emory University, and Duke Divinity School. Dr. Laughinghouse's contributions to her field are multifaceted, encompassing leadership roles on various boards and steering committees within the American Academy of Religion and the Society of Biblical Religion. Her recent focus centers on deconstructing worship, liturgies, and exploring church growth through the lens of often overlooked communities, interweaving environmental justice with race, memory loss, and ethnomusicology. As director of music at the historic Davie Street Presbyterian Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, Dr. Laughinghouse brings a rich musical heritage rooted in the Church of God in Christ tradition. Beyond academia and music, Dr. Laughinghouse is deeply involved in community activism. She nurtures young talent as a music teacher. Her personal philosophy emphasizes the importance of boundaries, protecting one's peace, and always being present. Last but certainly not least, we have the Chad Brawley. Dr. Chad Brawley has worked in full-time ministry for over 20 years. He's had the privilege of serving some of America's most noted ministries, such as the Potter's House of Dallas, Heritage Christian Center of Denver, Good Hope Baptist Church, and Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in Houston. He's also served the World Harvest Outreach Church, a Seventh-day Adventist church. Currently, Dr. Brawley serves as the pastor of worship and arts at the Luke Church in Humble, Texas. He received his Bachelor of Arts and Sciences in Music from the University of North Texas and a Master of Arts in Worship from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He holds an earned Doctorate of Ministry degree from the School of Theology at Boston University. Available on all digital music platforms, his We Worship project is an exhilarating collection of praise and worship songs, hymns, and anthems that you will love. Check that out. He is committed to assisting pastors, churches, and practitioners so that they can realize their full potential as conduits of transformation through worship art. I, good good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Let's get to it. Let's go
Good
to what the
afternoon.
people are looking for. You are with Dr. Martha Simmons on another session of Preaching and Preachers. If you are on, type in the name of another person who you know will benefit from this broadcast. They can jump on now, or it'll be up on my page for 2 weeks and they can watch it in their leisure. Let's get to Black church music today, beginning with Dr. Brawley. I've introduced you, but tell us briefly in your own words about your experience with church music. What would you like folk to know that I didn't say?
Um, like Mr. Carter, I've been working in church for a very long time. I started in the sixth grade in middle school when Dr. Theola Booker of Houston, Texas, invited me to be a part of her team. And I've been on this road ever since. And so I'm excited to be here today. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, all right. Philip Carter, tell us a bit about your journey in music, your experience with church music.
Well, it's been a good ride, and I think the one thing the one thought that came to my head when you asked that question is that I still like it. Like I
All
still love
right.
to do it. You know, I'm not bitter about it. I've had all
Mm.
kinds of experiences, like many other people have. Have great experiences, have had bad experiences, but I still love to do it. I still love to be with people, whether it be virtually or whether it be in person. And I still look forward to it. I still plan to do it like it's the biggest thing I've ever done.
All right, all right, all right. Mr. Merrick, how about you?
Well, it goes back to, again, being raised in church. And so here in Baltimore, I absolutely was not interested in being a musician. Music was just something that we had to do in our home. And so taking those music lessons and learning theory and all of that stuff, what I didn't know is that subliminally church was implanting in me a love that went
Mm.
to my soul, went to my core. And before too long, I was playing for Sunday school and then playing for, we had youth church, we had junior church. So we did downstairs once a month in church what they did upstairs in big church to,
Hmm.
I think, hone those skills. But then I found myself doing something that really blew my mind when the church's choir master said, I want you to assist me with the Women's Day choir. I was in college by then. Well, I almost had a heart attack because that was like the biggest day in the life of the church. But I had that experience. I sang in the senior choir. I played for many choirs and churches in Baltimore, and of course in Boston when I was there. But then my career as a church musician really came to an end about 12 years ago when I was terminated. I was fired and my services were no longer needed, I was told. But prior to that, I had already organized a community choir, the Community Concert Choir of Baltimore, which the mission is to preserve and promote sacred music of the African American church. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful for those 40 some years that I served in church music. And it's a part of me. It's a part of me.
Hmm.
So I continue to do that in the community. And that has taken me places that actually the church couldn't have. So I'm very grateful for all of it.
All right, all right. Dr. Laughinghouse, how about you?
My journey began very young as well, with my family being in music. My father, especially, he was a organist and musician early on when the Church of God in Christ started something called UNAC and all the conventions. So there was something that was ingrained in me that I didn't know. I just thought it was just something everyone did, right? I mean, being in
Hmm.
Oakland with the Hawkins, and my dad went played for them, and Daryl Coley. They went to high school together. So I heard this stuff, and I just thought it was a norm. I will say that now I've come to a place thankful for my theological education and finding ways to articulate a phenomenology of gospel music that's often what I've found to be more intentionally inclusive of people. I can play a certain song, it could bring so many people together. And often it's through gospel music that is more inclusive than our claimed liberating theologies that is preached. So I look at
All right.
gospel music, Black gospel music, as intentionally more inclusive than we would like to believe, sometimes, and even more inclusive than the words we're singing. You can have people
Mm-hmm.
that believe entirely different. And this happened at the Society for Study of Biblical Religion. And after this, we have dinner theater. I just got up there because, as musicians, somebody else is playing. You're like, let me get some of that, let me get on that keyboard. And I began to play a song, and people of all different theologies came together. Something like, I think I was playing songs like God is, something old that everyone knows. So my journey has continued to grow. I'm still on this journey, especially now playing at a Presbyterian church.
All right, all right, all right. Now, I post teasers before every broadcast. And so one of the ones that posted, well, I posted some of this, was concerning the fact that churches are shrinking. Black churches, white churches, Asian churches. Yes, we will always have that 1 or 2% that are mega churches. But the majority, okay, the other 98%, as I call them, those churches are shrinking. Okay, those churches are shrinking. And given that, Dr. Brawley, what does that mean? What does that mean for church musicians and ministers of music or ministers of worship and arts, whatever the term is that you use? What does it mean that they're shrinking?
It could mean a number of things as far as why it's shrinking.
Mhm.
There could be uh, just in our culture, church has become less important to many people culturally in many spaces, depending on where you live in the country. So that's one reason why a lot of churches may be shrinking. I also believe there may be cultural insensitivities that may also be present that cause our attendance in our churches to kind of shrink a little bit. Um, I think from the music standpoint, the calling is still there. The desire that God has for us to serve our congregations and to serve the people and to make disciples is still imperative. And so I think that's ultimately what it still means for us who do this work, is that we keep our hand to the plow and keep pushing and move forward in what God has called us to be, no matter what the size of the church, no matter how many people are coming, but keep on serving as best we can, discern the needs of the church, discern the needs of the congregation, discern the needs of the community that the church
Mm-hmm.
may be in, or the community that the church is serving, and still try our best to meet those needs ultimately.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Mr. Carter, what does it mean? These churches are shrinking. What does it mean for church musicians and leaders of worship and arts, ministers of music? What does it mean for them?
First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Brawley for his comments. It kind of opens up a couple of doors, but I think it means that we have to make adjustments. For the average church, it means adjustments in expectations. Where I live at in the DC area, there are economic adjustments, salary adjustments to musicians, and maybe in certain situations, some salaries to pastors and other leaders in the church.
Hmm.
So that's definitely going on in some cases, and in some cases, churches, and especially in our area, I'm sure this has happened in other parts of the country, but based on people I talked to, during the pandemic, the cuts that they made, they have not been able to recover from, especially as it pertains to musicians. So there's not enough musicians, and everybody's having church at the same time, and so there's a serious competition going on for musicians right now. My last thought is this, because during the pandemic, God took me from where I was and took me into this online space in a way that I didn't even know about. My last thought was this: is that the biggest I see from where from my viewpoint, there is an issue of something that was wrong before the pandemic,
Say
and
some more. What do you
it,
mean? Something was
so
wrong.
so if I'm not coming back to church, a lot of reasons why people don't come back to church, from my viewpoint and people I talk to, is that I'm not coming back to what I went to before the pandemic. And a lot of churches
Hmm.
don't have, and they're not able to answer why this ministry would be beneficial to you. They're just
Mm.
they're just griping about y'all need to come back to church. But until you can answer why and give me value of our fellowship in person, you just sounding brass, tinkling cymbal. And then people go online and they're talking to the world about coming back to church when they actually should be sending emails to their congregation. So that's
Mm.
another red flag. That's a desperation red flag. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that all of the churches are shrinking. We have a lot of us are trying to figure out how to adjust to this new normal, and a lot of us are really not doing well in doing it because we really need guidance and instruction.
Hmm. All right. All right. Dr. Laughinghouse, what are your thoughts? Given that it's shrinking, what does it mean for musicians and worship and art leaders? What does that mean?
She may be stuck.
For me, I think it's a, for me, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
good? Can you
Yes,
see me?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Before something happens, and I think it's a we have to refocus. We have to refocus, redefine what we mean by church growth. I kind of mentioned that in my bio because many are shrinking because the messages, not just the sermons, but the messages in the liturgies, the music that is selected, no matter how popular, and sometimes no matter how, we may try to bring songs of old that do not reflect, that aren't adequately addressing the people's realities. We can no longer rely on these cliches and sermons and music about the by and by. People want to know what they need something right now, you know, and people are also more capable of voicing that. I mean, we see that I'm a parent of three. My children are definitely clearer than I was in voicing their concerns. So we have to have music and liturgy that is voicing concerns today, which is what I mentioned in my bio. And we think of church growth as just children and young families. What about those
Mm-hmm.
who are widows, widowers, going through that? How does the music relate to them? What about those who are dealing with memory loss? What would happen if we opened our churches to having specific services for those with memory loss? I personally see what the music is doing for those in my congregation that are experiencing dementia, aphasia, all of those
Mhm.
things. What if we focus? That is growth, because otherwise we're saying they're of no value until we can see them participating in what can become theatrics and services, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
they're also a value. That is growth. Someone coming in and being a part, whether they can give money or not, that is growth. And when someone sees that the church is focusing more on that, and is prioritizing that, I think that can be, but that involves us reimagining or redefining what growth means.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Merrick, what's your sense of it? Churches are shrinking, and so what does it mean for church
Well,
musicians and
it
worship
means
and arts leaders?
Well, it means a lot, and I think that I'm probably ill prepared to speak from somebody who's actively participating as a church music minister. However,
Your
Dr.
ears to the
Simmons and
ground.
Dr.
We know
Baptist.
you know.
Yeah, 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 right. Well, I'm in a church, so it's kind of a dichotomy for me. I'm a founding member of the Open Church of Maryland, Dr. Braxton. Our
Mm-hmm.
congregation, as a result of the pandemic, is completely virtual. So while I'm
Mm-hmm.
a worship planner and we use existing music in our worship service, the real focus is we're talking about church shrinkage. We're talking about a world that has competing forces with
Mm-hmm.
church. Churches were all churches in my childhood. I'm a child of the 60s. They were filled, they were replete with people and music ministries. That's not the case today. But are we conflating growth with numbers of people attending church? Are we misunderstanding that church is not just music, and that if we're really being a church, are we serving the present age? Music is in many ways so important because if without the presence of music, the spirit cannot come, according to our ancestors. However, music is not the focus. You hear people say, well, let's do this music so we can get young people here. Let's do this music so we get folk here. So are we really trying to attract folk to entertain and meet a need around that and miss the real responsibility of church and the work of the church that should be taking place outside of worship and outside of a building? So churches are shrinking, and yes, they should. And it's not just churches, it's synagogues and it's mosques. They're shrinking because people recognize that maybe their connection to the creator isn't really dependent upon their membership in any organized religion.
Okay, okay. Uh, Dr. Brawley, some of you have alluded to this. Technology, especially given what we went through with COVID, technology has a huge role in music now, whether it allows us to uh, broadcast our services via Zoom, stream our services, whatever. um, do you have any concerns about using technology to facilitate church music? If you don't have any concerns, let's say you don't have any, okay? Do you have any recommendations concerning technology and church music?
I absolutely do. And this question actually connects slightly to the last one. And so I'd like to pair them together.
Okay.
One of the things that we can do as music people, as churches are shrinking, like Dr. Carter mentioned, during the pandemic, church was very different. Musicians were able to play for 2 and 3 and 4 churches a day, and all of that kind of stuff. And so now churches have gone back. And so I think one of the things that we need to take a serious look at, we may not want to talk about it, but we need to take a serious look at acquiring additional skills, acquiring additional credentials, acquiring additional ways to possibly make income. Someone said in the chat that
Mm,
this is affecting jobs. This is like affecting our economy in the music space. And so one of
mhm,
the things we have to do is advance our skills so that we are not depending just on the church for an income. And so that speaks to the technology piece. One of the things that I've had to do in my role is learn not just music stuff, but learn how to edit videos, learn how to deal with lighting, learn how to work with tracks and stems and program this and program that. And so our jobs have expanded. And so, with regard to concerns, one of my concerns with using technology for music is that we do not allow the technology to replace the people in ministry. In
Okay.
music, it's very easy for us to get tracks, to get stems, to have uh, singers singing and playing instruments and all those kind of things from the
Hmm.
computer side of things. And we may, if we're not careful, end up replacing a lot of people who God has gifted and given gifts to use in the body. And so we need to be careful of that. That's one of my concerns, that we don't replace people with technology in worship. But on the other end, I think technology is very necessary in enhancing worship, elevating the level of worship. I think the use of stems and tracks and vocal support appropriately um, can enhance our worship and help things move along and stay with the times. And all types of creativity is open when you use technology. There's a lot of, even with AI, there's a lot of
Hmm.
space to use all of that in our spaces. So we just have, it's a fine line, and we have to be careful how we use it.
Dr. Laughinghouse, same question. You know, talk to me about technology. Is it concerning, or is it okay with you? Any recommendations about it for church folk who tuned in?
Sure. I think I remember even prior to COVID just coming, which was huge in a lot of churches that I was attending, was technology and the tracks, right? Before every service, click track, and musicians were relying on that. Of course, many of these musicians were not like those here. Um, musicians that read music, right? But they were relying on them to use that elevation. So I think honoring that is like, okay, yes, technology is helpful and, can be helpful in the service. I don't have any disclaimers like against technology, except as Dr. Brawley mentioned, that we don't want to rely on something to overrule not just the creativity of all of us, but to hinder the movement of the spirit in a service. And I think we have to always, as music ministers, and me also as an organist, always told me, remember, you are in front of the people than a pastor and anybody else. So your prayer life is
Hmm.
important. How you treat this. So, and my stepfather didn't read, and neither did my dad. Now, my dad, theory all the way. So I had to do that. But I had to arrive 15 minutes before service. Minimal, really. He said 30 minutes. You should be playing some hymns. So he allowed and really taught me that as a minister of music, it was pastoral, but I could still bring in things. But it's about discerning the spirit even before you get there, but opening that up. And I think once you do that, if something's becoming too much technology, you can spot that and say, hey, let's roll this back, let's add this next time. There are going to be times
Mm.
when we see something at the end of the service, say, oh, we could have done this differently. And we should also be okay with that, because one thing about it is the church involves a bunch of human beings, and we're going to make some mistakes, but the reliance upon our walk and how we're living in our spiritual life is important.
Mr. Merrick, how about you? You, like you said, you're doing things over Zoom. So do you have any recommendations for people, or just concerns about technology, especially as churches continue to shrink?
Well, I don't have a concern. I'm very grateful for technology. I believe that
Okay.
everything the Creator designs for us is for a purpose. Now, how we use it is very important. So we have been intentional. And in the open church, everything we do is on purpose. So
Hmm.
technology has really enabled us to be a much more inclusive and diverse congregation, not just in terms of who is there, but how we worship. So we're able, because of technology, to include across denomination, across faith traditions, the kind
Hmm.
of music. So when we had a rabbi as our sermon, somebody delivering a message, when we have a monk who does that, when we have the person who is, an imam, we find music that is appropriate and connects to that faith tradition. I also would say, conversely, because again, I'm in a virtual congregation, I'm the founding director of almost 200 people in a community choir that is across this community, not just Baltimore, but members from as far away as Boston and Florida and LA and Vegas. That because of technology, they learn about the choir. technology has afforded us the opportunity now to debut at Carnegie Hall next year because of technology. But what I will say, of those upwards of 200 people that are singing in a community concert choir, two-thirds of those people don't sing in a church choir anymore because all too often their churches are not providing a comprehensive music program that incorporates our song, the slave song.
My
You can
goodness.
go in many
Mm.
black churches and never hear Negro spiritual. It's not part of the repertoire. Our children don't know our history. So the technology is helping us to convey our message of music and the diverse music in the black church. That makes me very sad because our black churches can have all of it. I'm not, I don't think that any one form of music is better than any other. It's all art. And it is the anthem, and it is the hymnody, it is the Negro spiritual, it is the modern and contemporary gospel music that is all over the world. And when we got these great big churches, it seems to me that these mega churches ought to have more comprehensive music programs that give all of these offerings, and technology can enable us to do that and actually spread it out and,
Yeah,
and
Mr.
showcase it.
All right. Mr. Carter, you talked about technology, opening up new things for you that you never dreamed of. Uh, Tell us about, do you have any concerns for technology or recommendations for other people who are not using it enough or
So
properly?
thank you. It's an important question. I'm trying not to overlap anything anybody has said. I
Mm-hmm.
will say on the musician standpoint, I use technology, and I suggest that others use it. I use technology more in presentation than in congregational singing.
Mm,
Because I think
okay.
when it comes to congregational singing, now you're confining the experience with the click track. You're
Okay.
not able to ebb and flow like you need to. But when it comes to my choir selections or some sort of a presentation, I use a lot more technology, and I think that kind of helps us to kind of you know give some instructions as to how to use it. When you start talking about technology, for me, because I broadcast 6 days a week, I'm thinking about the quality of someone's broadcast and what the purpose is of your broadcast at this point. And I think that now we're out the pandemic. A church that is still broadcasting, the average church needs to make up in their mind, is their ministry local or global?
Mm,
Because if it's global, then you need to upgrade what you're doing. And too many of our churches would do much better if they just broadcast through their website to their church members and not broadcast to a global audience, because you end up doing yourself more harm than good. You're presenting a picture online that may not actually be what it is in person. It may be a wonderful experience in person, but online you're distorted. We can't hear, or
doesn't
or
translate.
things are imbalanced. You got all
Yeah.
these things going on, and I just think that churches are not most of them are not set up for mass ministry. And this is what I mean by that. And this is when I was consulting churches during the pandemic. I asked them, is church, when you broadcast online, is that broadcasting online, or are you having church online? Because if you're
Mm,
having church online, you need a separate staff to minister to people online. If it's just an extension, then you need to broadcast to your members. And I think if we have that kind of outlook looking at church when it comes to the virtual space, as far as quality is concerned, we'll do a lot better, because it takes finances. It takes a staff
yes.
to do church online. I heard a church last year, I'm not going to name the name, but the pastor got up and thanked his online members for, in 6 months, they gave $435,000 online giving alone.
Mm,
They are having
yeah.
church
Yeah.
online for real. People are being blessed
Mm-hmm.
for real. People are
Yeah.
visiting their church for real. They're baptizing people in other cities. So I
Yeah.
think that as far as technology is concerned, as the black church is concerned, I think it's a dividing line at this point as to whether we're going to be serious about that technology piece in terms of online worship.
Okay, okay. All right now, Dr. Brawley, so given what he said, um, are there some things that worship and arts leaders need to know to even lead a worship and arts or music departments today? What he opened up so much. So some folks shouldn't even be online. They should just be broadcasting to their members. They shouldn't be trying to stream around the world or around the country. What do you got to know to say I lead a music department today?
You have to have a lot of skills. Of course, your music and your arts, everybody's doing arts now. So it's not just music anymore, it's arts.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have some understanding of the different arts, sacred arts, understand how to differentiate between sacred and secular in depending on the context of your ministry. It's also very important that the modern worship pastor or minister of music be familiar with technology, whether you're in a small church or a large church. Musicians need to be familiar with Ableton, with Logic, with Pro Tools, with these types of platforms that help enhance the music, or help with music presentation. On the video side, like I was saying earlier, we have to have those skills. You have to have pro presenter knowledge. You have to have knowledge of your streaming platforms and what systems work the best, what cameras work the best. All of that stuff is really part of the responsibility at this point. Even if you don't do it all yourself, you still have to manage a team of people, whether they're volunteers or staff. So you still have to have a working knowledge of the technology, how to handle people. People are coming with a whole different set of life issues when they come to rehearsals, when they come to
Mm-hmm.
church. And so these are all things that we have to be sensitive to as in the pastoral part of our roles, how to deal with our people and still love on our people and figure out how to bring out the best out of our people and enhance what people's gifts are, and help people discover all that, and make sure that everything runs smoothly. Relationship with pastors is also very important um, in this space. That's a whole nother thing. So I have no need to go into
You
all of
can talk
that,
about
but
it if you
that's
want
also
to.
part. That's important. Relationship with pastors is important. Planning well, like Mr. Carter was saying. If we're going to stream and do things with excellence, that takes planning, that takes preparation, that takes resources, that takes information, that takes data. And so we all need to be connected to those streams of information and cultivate great working, respectful relationships with pastors, so that we can work together to get the work done and not work in silos where things are disconnected and not working well together.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I'm running out of time, so let me get to some other things I just want to know. Mr.
Okay.
Merrick, um, churches are all the time. You all see this, I see this. They're always looking for musicians. They can't find musicians because churches are smaller. They don't have regular musicians. They can't afford regular musicians. Other than increasing programs that teach music, we always say we need more music programs. What do we do about this problem that so many churches have, are not having regular musicians because they can't afford them? What do we do about that, Mr. Merrick?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to look at when you're talking about affordability, what is our focus? What when you talk about a budget and you talk about priorities? Because again, is music a priority of that ministry? And if it is, then you're going to need to invest. In some instances, it may make perfect sense to recruit a musician who may be a student and invest in that musician. I remember when I was acquired at when Brad Braxton courted me to come to Douglas Memorial. It was really that it was 1995 to help start then a gospel choir. They didn't have a gospel choir in the church, hadn't had one in 30 years. But it was the subsequent growth of the choir and the congregation that informed the growth of that salary. So a lot of times, if you invest in who you want, you will also be the benefit of that investment. So they're focusing, they can't afford. What are you willing to invest so that you can afford?
Okay, Dr. Laughing House, what do we do? What do we do? We, like I said, and I mean, I'm not a musician, but people are always in my inbox. Do you know some musicians who can find me a musician? What do we do?
First, I want to say everything to that Dr. Merritt said is spot on. You have to really seek out investing back in, because so many musicians I'm on pages, they feel that they've been exploited. I've been there. We
Mm.
all have been there, right? I remember playing for a youth conference in the Children of Christ, and a lady, after weeks of rehearsal and a 3 night revival, youth revival, she handed me a check for $25. And my dad was like, "Don't
Oh,
ever do that again." Now, I will say
yeah.
I did not really learn my value until I stepped out of my, I love
Mhm,
it, my family's denomination.
mhm.
And then it
Mm-hmm.
was then when I learned, I was like, "Oh, well, wait, I do have these skills, right?" And so it was with these Presbyterians, learning my value. I turn things down that just do not meet my needs instead of me feeling obligated to do so. So I will say that I have gone back and I have conversations with young musicians. What are you doing to broaden so that you can then encourage the people that you're playing for to see to invest in you? So I think it's both and, Dr. Merritt. It is the people showing that they want to invest, but also we can, and I try to say, hey, you know, things, but you have to work on expanding what you're doing as
But
well.
I've also, to tag on
Yeah.
what you're saying, I've also admonished ministers and churches that are recruiting musicians, and I've also told my young musician friends or even peers, if salary is your motivation for being with the ministry, then I don't think you should be going there. And likewise, I will tell ministers, if you're interviewing somebody and in the first conversation is about how much they're being paid, rather than their inquiry about what your focus is, what your needs are, what your music ministry is doing, or what you wanted to do. If the conversation is not really about substance and it's only about money, then I think you're already starting off in the wrong foot.
Okay,
And
Mr.
I
Carter.
want to,
What?
can I say this, Dr. Simmons, before you go on to add
Okay.
this? The other thing is the people that we are looking at as far as musicians, as we see with this panel here, I'm the only woman. So many times we see of women as a practice and we use them. And then when it comes to professional and being paid, I can tell you countless times that I've been overlooked because of my gender. So there
Mhm.
Yeah.
are musicians there that are skilled and qualified that do not get, what they should get as far as honoring. I'm thinking of one friend's mother, Dr. Cooper's mother, Reverend, Dr. Charlene Moore Cooper, and I'm just learning about her because
Yeah.
it is not pushed out there like other amazing male composers. So, also, while you're looking for those musicians, also look among the young women and not just look over them as a fill in all the time. So we can end that
Amen.
patriarchy there as
Amen.
well.
Okay, Mr. Carter. What do we do? You
Well,
know,
I'm just
I
gonna.
know you people tell you all the time, man, help me find a musician.
So I'll just speak from that standpoint. I'm gonna talk to the church or the church leader. I tell every pastor, ask before you budget. Don't budget before you ask. So
Mm.
that's one of the biggest problems. I got $300. Well, who would you talk? Who would you ask? Who told you that was the going rate?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. That's what we decided. Well, then that's what you got to live with.
Whoa.
Two, the smaller churches can afford to change the time slot.
Hmm.
There is an extreme blessing in changing the time slot. Churches are growing in my area by having church in the afternoon. I'm a musician. I've made the money I'm going to make for the week. You don't have to pay me hardly anything, especially if I know you, to come and play your service in the afternoon. So now you have avoided having to pay the big dollars by changing your time slot. I don't know
Okay.
what it is about us trying to compete with everybody else church member having the same time slot, and you know that everybody's going to church at the same time when there is another congregation of people out there who don't watch football and who don't do these other things, that'd be glad to come to church
Yeah.
on Sunday afternoon or Saturday
Yeah.
evening. Number
Yeah.
three, if all else fails, play tracks. Save your money because you don't have it.
Yeah.
And watch, and you could be building up a huge nest egg. I could One of the churches that I belonged to a few years ago, I told the pastor, if you played tracks 3 Sundays out of the month, you could have some kind of Jubilee Sunday on fourth Sunday and bring a musician in. and he
Hmm.
did it, and the church grew.
Yeah.
It's other
Yeah.
ideas, so those are the three things I could plug in that I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, and definitely, I wish more churches would look for women musicians. Although Dr. Laughing House, I had a hard time. They were so busy getting three, trying to get three of them for this broadcast. These were the busy ones. So maybe I just know the busy people. That could be it too. But I definitely wish churches would call upon women musicians more. um Dr. Brawley, the other thing that you always seeing this on Facebook and Instagram, that church musicians and ministers of music, they don't know church hymns, and we just sing the 7-Eleven songs, the same uh, seven songs with the same 11 lines in them. They don't know the hymns. How can ministers of music and church and worship arts leaders expand their repertoire to make sure that it's balanced? Or, I saw somebody posted, folk don't want to hear those Negro spirituals and those hymns anymore. So they've gone on past that. Uh, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think one of the first things we need to do is actually sing them and actually program them into our services.
Hmm.
Years ago, I was speaking with one of the music directors at a very large church in our city, who called me to help him um, learn how to play one of the familiar, like "Greatest Thy Faithfulness" or something very common. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, how do you not know this? And
Yeah.
he said, we don't sing these at my church. I don't need to know them.
Mm.
And so that's one of the initial problems, is that we just don't do it. Now, with regard to people's tastes and what works in your culture, as the music leader, sometimes you have to make adjustments to how you present the music.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what we do at my church is we will couch a hymn inside of praise and worship material,
Hmm.
because our church is somewhat contemporary, but also very traditional in many ways. But um, everybody's not going to be able, culturally it doesn't work to say we're going to all stand for the morning hymn number, blah blah blah, and we're going to sing it formally all the way down with a pipe organ. Everybody, just, it doesn't work. So you have to be creative in how you present it. Everything doesn't have to be sung. You can do some hymns instrumentally. We can do hymns before service as a prelude, after as a postlude. There are many ways to present the hymns and make them palatable. Although they're palatable, they stand on their own, but culturally, sometimes we need to use our creativity to present them in different ways. That
No, I think the truth is that there's a shift. There's a
sure.
shift. It's okay to say
Mhm.
that there is a shift in music, and that hymns are not as favored as they once were by a lot of churches. I mean, that's how we ended up with no choirs and a lot of praise teams.
I'm about to
Mhm.
burst.
Yeah, shifts happen.
Mhm.
Shifts happen.
Mhm.
Dr. Merrick, talk to us about it. What are
Yeah, I
your
want to talk
thoughts?
about that. Again, this is about education. Church is more than singing and shouting, it's about learning and
Mhm.
understanding. People don't know what they like what they know. And what I'm experiencing in the Community Concert Choir of Baltimore is that, of course, I said we are established to preserve the sacred music tradition of the African American church. It's comprehensive. It includes the Negro song, it includes the hymns, it includes the anthems, it includes the gospel music. And what we have to do in churches is require, if our children don't know about the hymns of the church that brought their great grandparents over, they're going to miss something. And so we say people don't like, we need to include it. What I see at a signature concert with the Community Concert Choir, all of them, they start at 5 o'clock. Folk are sitting there at 2 o'clock with their Sunday, and they're not all old people, you all. And the greatest influx of people coming in the Community Concert Choir of Baltimore right now are under the age of 30, because many of these young people are saying they think they're learning new music. They don't hear this in the churches that they have attended. And when we hear a young person say, I don't know that hymn, I don't know that spiritual, I don't know that anthem, it's not their fault. It's the church's fault for not raising this music and having it be part of, as I said, that music that I was hearing, a pipe organ was subliminally put in me because that's all I heard as a child. As a matter of fact, it was the only thing that got my attention in church. It wasn't the preaching, it wasn't the praying, it was that organ music that for some
Mm.
reason attracted me. And it's still attracting folk. But if we don't offer it, it's going to be gone. And I'm not saying dispose of our new artists. We need them, they're brilliant. But let's do it all. We're the only culture often that seems to dispose of our own heritage. When you go in a synagogue, I don't care how wealthy it is, how affluent they are, how modern it is, they know their tradition. When you go in a mosque, I don't care how forward it is, they know their tradition. Black folk, we got something that the world wants everywhere in the world, and we're not honored in our own world.
Now, Mr. Carter, what you think? What you think is
I got a
uh,
whole lot because I do hymns every day.
okay?
But he nailed it. Exposure and education is everything. And there isn't but one genre of music, and people need to understand that. It's called good.
Yes.
We
And when you
hope
do it good, people love it. It
That's
doesn't
right.
really matter whether it's a hymn or anything else. It's ain't but one genre. It's good.
so. If
Um,
it's not
and
good,
and
that's a problem.
Right, and when we talk about uh, why the hymn went away, I got into a serious discussion. He wouldn't mind me saying this with Dr. Roland Carter. I told him, "Well, look in the mirror if you want to know why hymns went away, because
Whoa.
somewhere between your generation and mine, y'all stopped doing hymns in church." Or you beat it down our throats so bad you wouldn't allow us to do anything else. And since we are a people of extremes, we turned the tables all the way around. It's a myth that people aren't singing hymns. It's always been a myth, just like it's a myth that the church choir has gone away. It's
Hmm.
Hmm.
all a myth. People are singing what they see, and as they learn, they sing more. And the last thing I'm going to say, especially to our older generation, we have to stop complaining and go from complaining to solutions. And when you go to solutions, then things start to change. We always people don't know, these young folk don't know all this. Well, there's nothing around. You have provided no resource for them to
Hmm.
learn anything
That's
other
right.
than complaining. Here's another thing. We have to educate young pastors as to what hymns bring, not just to the church, but to their sermons.
Mm.
Yes. When you hymns bring I wrote a book called Hymns Matters, shameless plug. Hymns bring education, they bring theory, they bring theology, they bring history, they bring inspiration. And the biggest thing we have to tell, especially the the millennials, is that white people weren't the only ones that wrote hymns.
Oh
There's a
gosh.
whole lot of black people who wrote hymns. And
Okay.
they and
Okay.
him
Let,
and it's
let,
not
let, let
just
me
the
let
white man. Yeah.
let me let let
Huh?
me let Dr. Laughinghouse get in
Go ahead.
get in on this. Talk to us, Doc.
Well, Dr. Mayer, Dr. Carter, that's the education. And I think that what Dr. Carter is getting to towards the end, saying that the pastors need to know, I was thinking as a theologian and a professor, I had presented something kind of music related, but really theology. And they said, well, the students may not want to do this because it sounds more music. But if we have this a part of these programs, the NDiv programs, you need to understand hymnology, and it's going to enhance your sermons. That needs to be pushed. We need to also go to these theological institutions and press that, because when they see how much that helps, like I said, playing that before the sermon. But I want to also say really quickly that this whole myth of, like you all said, the hymns don't work, or this is so bad, and this is old school. This is a result of white supremacy and them wanting to have us look at who we are and our identity and saying that it is not enough. In fact, you need to get up
Mm.
and move off the pot. When in
Whoa.
essence, what's going to happen is when we get up and move off, they're going to jump on, and we see that today with a lot of CCM. We
Okay.
see that the structure
What
of
is
their music.
CCM? Not everybody knows
Oh,
what that is.
contemporary Christian music, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that. And then what will happen is they'll say, you come sing our music, go into your circles and bring it, even though this music comes from a theology that does not care anything about your black soul. So then when we do bring our realities of Black Lives Mattering, we're then told that is too political and we don't need that. So we have a lot of displaced Christians within these other churches singing this music when really it is a straight up co-opt of our element of understanding hymns. I love a Charles West, hymn, but there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing like the black hymns that I grew up on, and even the ones that I'll be honest, I'm 46 years old, grown up in the church my whole life, fourth generation Kojic, all that stuff, and I'm still learning hymns,
Mm-hmm.
that I had not heard. And we have to be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
We do not arrive to a point. Paul said in Corinthians, the wise do not be boastful.
Yeah.
So we need to apply all that.
Keep learning, keep done. We are out of time, but Dr. Brawley, just in a couple of seconds, um, uh, you just give me your thoughts on how African American ministers of music, worship, and art leaders, whatever the term is, how they can ensure that they are singing the songs of our faith community. And Dr. Laughinghouse has led us into this more than uplifting the music of non-Black faith communities. How can
Very
we do
simply, very simply seek out those composers, seek out
that?
that music, find it, go to conferences, go to conventions, have a mentor, connect with people who have the knowledge, and literally seek out those composers and seek out the recordings and the music that's been published by African American composers, and embrace it and do it.
Mm-hmm. Reverend Carter, Mr. Carter. You know me. I'll make anybody a preacher. Uh how can we do it? How can we make sure we're
So,
singing our music more than the CCM songs?
in 20 seconds, just remember, most CCM is vertical, most of our music is horizontal. And so
Look out.
you will always have to go, if you go horizontal, you will always have to go black, because you can go how great is our God in the beginning, but at some point you got to get to we're going to make it.
Mm, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Mr. Barrett, what can we do to make sure that happens? How do you make sure we're singing
Exposure.
our music more than
And I with my colleagues again, it's about exposure. If you stay in the cocoon where you are, then all you know is all you know. It is so important. There are still associations. There are the National Association of Negro Musicians. You got the Hamptons Ministers Conference. You all know about these associations, but the Thomas Dorsey, you got, but go out, be willing to learn. If you're going to serve, you're going to need to learn. You cannot lead where you won't go, and you can't teach what you don't know.
Yes, sir.
all right now? And the great thing about streaming is that people can actually go online. They may not be able to travel to many places, but they can go online and travel. They can go online and learn from these great panelists. They can go
Technology.
online and learn from their watching worship services, but you got to be open. Okay. Don't let white folk tell you what you should be doing, or and don't let the culture drive. The culture alone drive your worship either, because we'll see a statement on Instagram, and all of a sudden, that's what we're doing. We ain't doing them hymns no more. You know, so you can learn. You can learn, and there's so many resources. Someone said give them some more resources. They just named three. The Thomas Dorsey, what is it? What's the full name of it?
This is Thomas Dorsey Convention. That's the
The
National
Thomas
Association
Dorsey
of Gospel
Convention.
Choirs and Choruses. You got the Hampton Ministers Conference, Choir Directors, Organist Guild, the National Association of Negro Musicians. There's the Hymn Society. I mean, we can go on and on. Inbox me, and we can
Yeah.
follow up with you. Yeah.
All right, all right, all right. The resources are there. Most of them you can find online, and you can surely hit any of these individuals up on Facebook, and they or Instagram or other places, and they will give you a couple of resources. Dr. Laughinghouse, you got the last word. 15 seconds.
15 seconds is I think we should not limit him to what has already been written and go to our grandmothers and grandparents. My grandmother, like I said, the church grandmother, there's some song she's saying I have on recording that is not written. Those are hymns. Let's
That's right.
not limit hymns and authenticating hymns to what is already written. That is white supremacist way of thinking.
Absolutely.
We are much bigger than that, and there's more that we have to offer, so we can then encourage the young musicians learn how to compose, so then you can have a composition. But go back to our grandparents and great grandparents, or the songs we remember them singing. Those are hymns as well. Let's not
All right.
classify hymns in one way.
Let's do some new hymns. Amen. God bless you all. This has been so rich. So,
Wonderful.
so, so rich. My goodness. We could go on for at least another hour, and people are hungry for this information. They're just hungry for it. And I know folk are going to be reviewing this broadcast for the next 2 weeks. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you for hitting my Cash App as an independent scholar. And as I always say, share the video. This won't cost you anything. Share the videos. There are young musicians who don't know any of my guests. They don't know it. All they know is they're trying to help their church and their music department. Share the video with those people. Share the video. God bless each of you. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you soon. Lord, say the same. Thank you to
Thank you,
my
Thank you.
Dr.
wonderful
Simmons.
guests again.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank you.
right.